to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2022? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church laws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2022. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for this exciting special Mother's Day edition of Mantle Mondays. I am so excited about tonight, and I want you to like, invite, share, tag, subscribe to our YouTube channel, reach out to your mother, your sister, your auntie, your significant other, because I believe tonight is not only going to be inspirational, but I believe it's going to be informative and perhaps life-saving. And so I invite you now, whether you're watching on our book channels, our Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, tune in tonight for this special edition of Mantle Mondays. Good to see you, Apostle Daniels, and praying for your mother and others that are on tonight. Once again, we invite you to like, to invite, to share, to tag, to comment. Feel free to ask questions on tonight. I'm so excited about tonight. Many of the guests, I've gotten to know as an adult or later in life. But our guest tonight is someone I think I've known all of her life. And I've seen her ever since she was a little girl and how she's grown up to be a woman of God and a professional and a trailblazer in her field. I was thinking years ago, some remember my home church, Shiloh Way across. I was assigned to be the director of the children's choir. Yes, as a teenage boy, I was assigned to be the director for the children's choir. And this young lady would lead songs in the choir. I remember being over the junior youth usher board. She was an usher. She always was focused. She always did well in school. She was a poet, so mature for her age. And when we heard that she was going to UNC Chapel Hill and on to medical school, and we have kept up with her career, and we're just so proud of her and her accomplishments. And so I am so glad to be connected to her and know her and her family. And so without further delay, I want to invite to Mantle Mondays, Dr. LaVonne Hairston. Let's receive Dr. Hairston. How are you, Dr. Hairston?
I am well. Thank you so much for such a sweet introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're so honored to have you. We're so proud of you and your accomplishments and what you're doing in the medical field and not only inside the profession with your nonprofit organization, which we're going to talk about more, but we just thank God for you and what you're doing and what you're going to accomplish in life.
Thank
so
you.
Let me ask you. So I don't want to infringe on your time, and I know you're very busy woman. What is your typical day or week like as a doctor?
Well,
is there such thing as typical?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I've had quite a few shifts in my career in particular. After medical school, we go through residency in order to train into our particular field. And then after that, you can decide how you would like to practice. Residency, I can kind of start there, is kind of crazy. And depending on what specialty you choose, your hours may be longer than others, but I would honestly say regardless of which specialty you choose, you're working a lot. And they call it residency because you live in the hospital, literally. So During training, you're averaging about 80 hours a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. And it is pretty grueling. And the goal is that once you are done with that time in training, you're able to function independently as a physician taking care of patients. So it's supposed to be difficult, right? But it is a 4 years that, well, for OBGYN, it's 4 years. For other specialties, it may vary. But it was very challenging. And after that, you graduate, you go through training, and you can kind of dictate how you want your daily life to look. So if you want to pursue a career in academics, that may look a certain way. OBGYN has really evolved, especially over the last several years. And we have the development of the OB hospitalist position, which are OBs who specifically work in the hospital, do shift work, work 12, 24-hour shifts, and then they're off for however many days, and then they come back and do it again. We've also had the development of MIGS, or minimally invasive gynecologic surgery. So for those who may not be huge fans of OB, but they love GYN, they love surgery, they love procedures, they may have kind of shifted to that. So when I first got out of training, I was in a more traditional role in a private practice. And so initially in that particular group, we were what I say Q5. Q5 means you are on call every 5th night. So I'll go through kind of how that looked. So, in most offices, you kind of have a typical day, 8 to 5, 9 to 5 in the office. But if you're on call, that means that you are attached to that pager from the time, whatever the time allotted is for your particular group. I think our time was 8 to 8 or something like that. So everyone else gets to go home after they're done with their patients. But if you have patients who are laboring in the hospital, if you have emergencies that come into the hospital, you have to go in, and that continues through 8 o'clock the next morning. And typically after that, you have to come back to the office and continue seeing patients. So every structure of every place is a little different. How often you're on call depends on your group. And how many people are there. And, again, depending on whether or not you're in private practice or academics, like everything varies so much now. And I think that there's a plethora of opportunities that graduates are able to pursue now. So I don't want to scare anybody away, because it really is like pretty dynamic what you can and cannot do. So
You're right. We watch TV and you see the hospitals and, people sleeping in the hospitals and drinking tons of coffee. And you wonder,
that's real.
It's real life. Okay.
That's real life.
So how is it that you're guardians of health, but seemingly live such a unhealthy lifestyle?
Listen, that is something that honestly we battle on a regular, because as healers, it can be very, very difficult to focus on yourself when you're trained and you are called to take care of other people. You put yourself on the back burner. And unfortunately, especially during COVID, we have seen a lot of that. Those unhealthy practices really come to the forefront with physician burnout. And so a lot of systems, hospitals, organizations have implemented just different programming to help mitigate that. But it's always been an issue. I just think COVID kind of brought it a little more to the forefront. So, what you're saying is absolutely true. And it's not ideal, but it is unfortunately the lifestyle of a lot of physicians, particularly those who do take call, because not every physician takes call.
So since you have that schedule, do most physicians take a big vacation to kind of offset it?
So, particularly for specialties that take call, your goal is to be in a larger group, because that means that your call is more infrequent.
Okay.
So with academics specifically, most, OBGYN programs have, 15, 20 plus staff. And so some of them may be very specific to like a particular, maternal fetal medicine or GYN oncology or what have you. But for your generalist, if it's a pool of 10 to 12 to 15 people, that means you're only on call once every 15 days.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so, it really does vary. So all of this sounds a little scary, I know, but, you really can still have a great quality of life. It just depends on a lot of different factors. So, one of my colleagues, she typically, when they're on call, she gets off, I think, 7 o'clock the following day and is off that entire day.
Okay.
Yeah. So every office kind of does it in a different way so that, we actually do get rest.
I love that. Aunt Sandaline is watching. I'm glad that she's watching. Some of the people from back home. Now, you threw out some acronyms, OB, and then there's the hyphen GYN, and
Yes.
then there are gynecologists. For us that don't know, what is the distinction between? So what exactly do you do, and what do those other things do?
So OB stands or is short for obstetrician. So that is who delivers your babies. Okay,
Okay.
that is antenatal care, intranatal care, postnatal care, what have you. That is everything in regards to labor and delivery. Your gynecology is specific to gynecologic issues. So your abnormal uterine bleeding, which can be outpatient or surgical, right? So your abnormal bleeding, your contraception, things of that nature, or for patients who need hysterectomies or other GYN procedures. But, all of us are trained to do both.
Okay.
But again, now because the field is definitely expanding in regards to kind of the scope and the fellowships that are available, there are some people who choose to do one or the other.
Now, I've known you, like I said, I think since you were a little girl. Did you always want to be a doctor?
Ooh, honestly, for as long as I can remember, I know I decided in high school that I wanted to be a physician. I think at that time I wanted to be a pediatrician specifically, but I knew
Okay.
I wanted to go to medical school. So when I went to undergrad, that was my focus.
Okay. So you told us about residency. Go back to your high school, get ready to go to college. You go to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and from there, where do we go from there?
So from UNC, I matriculated into Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a HBCU. It's only a graduate institution. They do not have an undergrad. So we have a graduate school, we have a medical school and a dental school. And actually, we actually recently added 2 schools as well. So Meharry is doing a fantastic job at expanding. And I'm sure you've heard about all the wonderful things we've been doing since the start of the pandemic as well.
So after Meharry, what happened? So undergrad is 4 years. What did you major in at UNC?
At UNC, I majored in exercise and sports science, and I minored in chemistry.
Okay.
I think it's specifically with my nonprofit, which I know we'll chat about. I talked to my mentees about not necessarily having to major in bio or chemistry, because so often, I'm sure that's probably what you expected me to say. Oh, I majored in bio. No, absolutely not. I wanted to major in something that I truly enjoyed. And could see myself doing if I chose to shift from medicine. And so my minor in chemistry was like, okay, I got my prerequisites done. Here we
Right.
are. But exercise science was still lots of physiology. And it was like a really, really awesome field. I had great professors. So it was great. So that was 4 years. And then when I went to Meharry Medical College for medical school, that was also 4 years.
And so after the 4 years of medical school, then you add on 4 years of residency.
Yes.
Oh
So
my
when
goodness,
you
12 years old. Oh, yes.
Yes. So when you are in medical school, you decide what specialty you want to pursue.
Okay.
So that can be pediatrics, that can be OBGYN, that can be internal medicine, general surgery, radiology. I mean, it's a ton of fields, right? And depending on what you choose, that dictates how long your residency is, because every training program is a different length of time. And it's funny because I was talking to my mom recently about this. When I started, typically we start rotations at the beginning of 3rd year. And I was gung ho, like family medicine, primary care, just knew that's what I was going to do. And before we started rotations, I distinctly remember telling a classmate, I'm not 100% sure what field I'll end up pursuing, but it definitely will not be OBGYN. I was like, I'm not interested in the call. Nope, not going to do it.
So what changed?
The rotation. So, and I actually pushed it like to the end of my rotations too. I was like, oh, OB can be last. I'm not, I don't want to do that anyway. And then when I started my rotations, and no offense to you, Pastor Travis, but I realized very quickly that I did not like taking care of men. I was so disinterested. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so uncomfortable, and it was just weird. Like I just wasn't interested at all.
Right.
And the fields that I thought that I would be like gung ho about, I wasn't. And I really was much more interested in women's health than I ever realized, because the way that some of the primary care fields touched on some of the women's health issues, I wanted to know more.
Okay.
So when I got to OB, I just thought it was like wonderful because it's such a dynamic field. You can be delivering a baby one minute, you can be in the office counseling a patient another minute, or you can be in the OR doing a hysterectomy. And so I just thought it was really fantastic.
So let me just throw this thing right, and I see your father watching. Shout out to Brother Todd Hairston.
Hi, Dad.
So do you get offended? Now, it took you 12 years to be called Dr. Hairston.
Oh,
When somebody just pops up and say, Doc, does that rub you the wrong way?
oh no. I guess offended that it took me so long and like other people are able to
Well,
kind of.
people who aren't really even doctors at all. I'm just saying, it took you 12 years to become a doctor, and there are
Well,
other
listen, you might be
doctors.
opening up a whole can of worms right now, so I'm not gonna say too much. What I will say is that before I started this journey, I knew how long it would take, but that wasn't even kind of on my mind, I guess.
Mhm.
I was like, all right, you got to take it a day at a time because that was a really long time, right?
Right.
And I look back now, like, man, UNC seemed like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I was just like, just take it a day at a time. The thought of how long it was it didn't bother me because to me, it's a calling, right? Because I also talk to my parents a lot in undergrad too, because when I started my prerequisites, I was like, ooh, do I really want to do medicine? These
Right.
classes are hard, like ridiculously hard. And I changed my major a couple times. I ventured into this, that, and the third. My mom and dad were always very supportive, like, sure, whatever you want to do, we're behind you. And I ended up right back where I started in medicine, where, I was going to end up anyway, right? But I was trying to run from it because it was difficult. And so, yeah. I don't even want to touch your question too much, but I knew that I wanted to be a physician and it was a calling. So, yeah, but all the other programs out here, they can do what they do.
And I appreciate you saying that it was a calling because, truth be told, I flirted with pre-med for one semester. I was going to be a business major. Pre-med, I wanted to be a doctor, own my own hospital, and took chemistry. And I said, I just don't have the passion for it.
Yeah,
And
and you have to, just like your passion for law, right?
right.
Like
And so
I would never.
and one of my friends was like, wait a minute, if you love government and politics and history and law, why are you over here doing medicine when your heart is not in it? To go to
Correct.
school, to persevere 12 years, your heart has to be in it. So how
100%.
important, when you say calling, how important is it when your profession lines up with your God-given calling?
I mean, I would say it is invaluable because whether it is medicine, whether it's business, whether it's law, whatever it is that God's placed in your spirit, there will be many obstacles. Many obstacles. I very rarely do I talk to any of my close friends and colleagues who have gone on to graduate school and have professional careers who didn't run into some type of speed bump, right? And if it's not a passion or if it's not your calling, then those things can completely derail whatever you're trying to do, right? But when it is, you're going to find a way to push through, whether that's plan B, C, D, E, or whatever, you're going to get there. You know what I mean? It may just be not on that straight and narrow.
And we appreciate the fact that you were able to navigate through the 12 years to be where you are today. You had a PWI experience and you had an HBCU experience. You're similar to me. I had both experiences. I appreciate both experiences. For those who are considering, I know I think May 1st, a lot of students announced their college choice selection day. What would you say to someone who's trying to decide on the PWI or the HBCU route, or what are the benefits of both as we both experience?
Ooh, they were so different. They
Yes, they are.
they were so different. Man, interestingly enough, I had a conversation recently with a nurse whose daughter is trying to decide what HBCU she wants to attend because she only wants to go to HBCU. And she's trying to decide based off of like what programs they have or what have you. Um, that's one thing I would caution because I think part of undergrad, part of what it's designed to do is help you grow up, right? And so
Mhm.
what you may come in thinking you want to do is likely going to change, a
Right.
couple of times. And so if you choose a school based off of one thing and then you end up changing to something else, then I don't know. I think that can be a little tricky. So my advice to her for her daughter was to tell her to visit the school.
Mhm.
Visiting campuses was major for me. So, I'm from Virginia, born and raised, right? So I applied to the UVA, the Virginia Tech, the VCU. And then UNC had always been my dream school, always, since I was little. And, I remember people in school telling me, oh, LaVonne, it's hard to get in there as an out-of-state student, whatever. I never once doubted myself, but you got other people that are like,
Right.
oh no.
Right.
But, I applied to all the Virginia schools. I got into all of them. I visited them. And, no disrespect to your alma mater. But let me tell you, I went to UVA. My dad took me to UVA, and he can tell you, we were, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes into the tour. And I was like, Dad, we can go. And he was like, huh? We drove our way up here. I was like, this ain't for me. We can go, Daddy.
Right.
And we left because I knew, like, I didn't feel comfortable. Same thing with tech. I knew that wasn't home. So
Right.
my dad and I went to UNC. We didn't even go when the campus was open. We went on Good Friday, completely not thinking that, everything was closed. That's all I needed. I was walking through campus, seeing the students that were there. I was like, ooh, I'm home. I'm home.
Right.
And I felt so comfortable. It was the last acceptance that I got. Like, I was on pins and needles. And when I got that acceptance letter, I knew that's where I was going. And interestingly enough, UNC gave me enough money that it was cheaper than the other in-state schools.
And
So
financial aid is so important because my experience was different. I applied to UNC, but I didn't get and it got accepted, but didn't get the same financial aid package to UVA. But I know your dad always wore Carolina blue.
yes, we have been diehard UNC since like I was little. So that was my dream school, truly. But I would honestly say visiting the campuses, talking to the students, seeing what they have to offer, also seeing what their alumni are accomplishing, to me, are important factors in choosing your school, whether that's an HBCU or PWI.
I'm laughing at I'm thinking about how so many people that may be watching from other states and other places don't realize that even though we lived in Virginia, it's completely Carolina territory when it comes to basketball. I mean, you can find more Carolina stuff than you ever find UVA stuff. Even now, after winning a championship, I cannot go home and find UVA gear. I can find Carolina stuff, and I can maybe find Tech stuff. But no. So have you recovered since the championship loss?
Oh, dang. The dagger. Listen, that was tough, but let me say that our championship was that Saturday when we sent Coach K packing. Happy retirement, sir.
I love it. So then you go to the HBCU. Was that planned? I know UNC, you had medicine in view. See, for me, I didn't know I was going to do both. So I'm thinking UVA, I wanted to go to an ACC school, grew up ACC, watching ACC on TV. I want to go to a school that I can see play on television. I wasn't thinking about law school or graduate school. But with you already having in mind going to medical school, had you thought about what your next step would be after UNC?
Not until so I'll say I started thinking about it more when I did a summer enrichment program called SCP at UNC. It was during the summer of my sophomore year, I believe. And that is a fantastic, fantastic program at UNC that just really helps minority students get exposed to really all healthcare professions, not just medicine. That is what really made me start to focus more on what came post-graduation. And as much as I loved UNC for undergrad, I did not want to stay at UNC or really any PWI for graduate school. I wanted a different experience.
And so the experience you have how many HBCU medical schools are there? It's Howard, Meharry.
Howard, Meharry, Morehouse, and Charles Drew.
Okay. So you're at Meharry now, and after having the Carolina experience, was it an easy transition or was it more difficult? I found it interesting at Howard. the Black community was so close knit at UVA. When we got
Mhm.
to Howard, wouldn't say we weren't close knit, but it was more diversity. You know, you had East Coast,
Mm.
West Coast, you had urban, suburban, people who went to
Mhm.
private school versus public school, people who were fraternity, non-fraternity. It was
Mhm.
almost like you saw the greater diversity. You had people who were Caribbean, African,
Mhm.
a little bit more diversity of the African American experience than at the PWI, where it seemed like it was all kind of clumped together, and you didn't
Agree.
see, yeah.
Agreed. I would have to agree with that, at least from my circle, because
Mm,
of course, not every minority at every PWI knows each other. I'll also say though that our the class of '07 at UNC, we were actually very close. Our Black community in the class of '07 at UNC was really close and tight knit. But I would have to agree with that assessment that when I did get to Meharry, of course, it's a HBCU, so the majority African American, but a very diverse group from everywhere, which was really beautiful. Um, yeah, it was awesome. But the familial atmosphere, I think, was actually probably more close knit at Meharry
okay.
than we were at UNC, and we were great at UNC. We were tight, close knit at UNC too, but at Meharry it was just different. Like I feel like they were and are family. Like two of my best friends now, I met at Meharry. They're my classmates. We graduated together. One of my spiritual mentors from Meharry. One of my adopted grandpas is what I call him from Meharry. Like, I mean, so many people that I still keep in touch with now. And I'm part of the Alumni Association too. It just made me want to stay close. And continue to give back and continue to go back and continue to stay involved. And so, yeah, both great experiences, but both very different.
So for someone who knows they want to do both, would you recommend that they have both experiences? Well, when I say both, meaning they plan to go to graduate school, would you recommend having an HBCU PWI experience? Some want to do all HBCU, some want to do all PWI. Do you
Mm-mm.
recommend the diversity?
No, I recommend whatever is their preference because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. That was just my preference at the time. And to be honest, the way this economy is set up right now, I say follow the money.
Right, right, right.
Listen, if somebody is giving you a scholarship, if this tuition is $50,000 cheaper than this one,
Right.
these are all things to consider because, yeah, you may want that particular experience at whatever institution, but if this one is offering you a partial for scholarship and this one is offering you zero, these are things to consider because these interest rates are real out here.
Right, and I'm not even going to ask you what your student loan debt is, but I can imagine after all those years and I don't know. I know they're talking about forgiveness for nurses and teachers. I don't know if there's forgiveness for physicians, and I know there's no
There
forgiveness
is.
for lawyers.
Well, you guys don't need forgiveness.
We're not as favorably looked upon.
No, not in my field. But yeah, there are forgiveness programs for physicians too. Of course, there is the military. There is the National Health Service Corps. There's a lot of and there are different state programs as well. So there's lots of different ways um, to help have or to have some student loan relief. But yeah, graduate school, whether it be medicine, pharmacy, law, dental, whatever, is really expensive. So, like I said, calling, passion, it needs to be
Yes.
there because this is not a game.
You mentioned diversity and talked about your experience at UNC as well as Meharry. Now you're in the medical profession. How likely is it to see someone like you as a colleague in the medical profession?
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. I've been really blessed. I'll say that. I've been really, really blessed and specifically sought out um, employment opportunities where I would not be the only brown face.
Okay.
There are many of my colleagues who thrive in those environments, but for me, I know I need the support of someone who looks like me. Like, I know I want to see another Black physician, whether it be male, female, whatever the case may be. But when I tell you that is much easier said than done, I actually did an interview with a Hampton Roads physician magazine recently, and just talked about some of those statistics and how there are some patients who will go their entire lives without ever seeing a Black physician.
Wow.
Depending on what resources you read, about 5 to 7% of physicians are Black, which is abysmal, right? So only about 2.6% are Black women. So even though I find us, because of my network, there are many people who can't, hey, Dr. Hairston, hey, LaVonne, can you help me find a Black physician? Sure. That's because I know us, I'm part of the network. But if I was not, it would be very, very difficult.
So what is the medical profession, and what are patients missing out on because of that lack of diversity?
I'll say one thing specifically for our youth, right, is representation. So when we talk about increasing the percentage or the number of Black physicians or Black lawyers or Black dentists or what have you, and you have these like career workshops and things like that schools provide, when these little brown children don't see us and all they see are the majority, then do they really think that this is what they can be? I'm not sure. I would hope that they still do. But when they can see a brown face in that white coat, then to me, it makes it real. And so those are the ways that you increase diversity, by like grooming the younger generation to want to do these things, but they have to be exposed to it. So I think that is a really big part.
Did you have that coming up?
No.
What makes you so special in so many ways, we grow up in a small town, in terms of high unemployment, not a lot of people had necessarily gone away to college, or definitely to post undergraduate. And, and you overcame those challenges to be where you are. So was there someone who inspired you to be where you are today?
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of people. There's no one particular person. My family, of course, my dad and my mom have been instrumental in making sure that my academics were always at the forefront. And so, I loved playing like softball, basketball, but I certainly was not the greatest at it. It was just definitely something that I enjoyed doing, but was really not that good. And so, just making sure that I, kept that in perspective as well. And even though I played sports and I had extracurriculars, that academics were at the forefront. And, in, high school or whatever grade, if my grades were not on par, then my mom wouldn't let me go to practice.
Okay.
You don't reward bad behavior, right? You don't reward bad grades or anything like that. And so she got on me enough really in elementary school that starting in middle school, I was my own, like, listen, all right, I got to get an A in this. I got to get a B in this, like never got a C, none of that. So my parents didn't have to get on me anymore. And I was just focused. In high school, I was really competitive too. So, I mean, that competition is like, okay, I was in my guidance counselor's office, like, especially senior year, probably every day. And our class in Virginia Beach was around 500 students, I believe. And I graduated top 10. And that was because I knew, like, I was in competition with some of my other classmates. And that was really healthy competition because it helped us all be better. But, ultimately, my family are my biggest cheerleaders. And they've certainly helped me tremendously along the way, especially my late grandmothers, too. Who were always very, very encouraging, very prayerful, especially when I moved to Eastern Virginia and away from Martinsville.
Wow. I remember that now when you said you moved to Virginia Beach for high school and you stayed focused and we continue to hear about your accomplishments. I want to shift a little bit to some of the issues in the medical issues, especially pertaining to Black women or women in general. I think last month was it Health Awareness Month?
National Minority Health Month. Yep. And that encompasses Black Maternal Health Week too. Yeah.
Okay. And I know one of the things that they were sharing about is the outrageous number of, I guess, Black mortality when it comes to pregnancy and giving birth. My wife had postpartum preeclampsia with our first two children. Had to be rehospitalized, nearly passed away. And then the second time it wasn't as bad, but it was higher than it should be and would not come down. It would actually elevate at night. And then with the third child, they made the decision to induce labor before the due date to avoid the whole situation.
Right.
But there were other women who were in the hospital who were not as blessed, as fortunate as my wife. What's going on? That's a loaded question. What's going on?
It is, and it's really unfortunate that we're still asking this question, because despite our technological advances, despite all of our studies, despite the research, we are one of the only developed countries where our maternal mortality and morbidity just continues to increase year after year after year. And I know the statistic that you were referencing that I know we've heard a lot of is that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. And it is true. It is multifactorial. I can say that there is no one thing that we can fix that would alleviate it all. There are so many issues. Part of it is, of course, what we talk about is the inherent racism that is a part of our healthcare system that some people may choose not to acknowledge, but it is there. The other part, or one other part, is our healthcare system in general. It is very, very broken. For example, oftentimes you will see the leaders of hospitals are not physicians, right? They are business people. They are MBAs. Okay. So what does that typically mean? That means that they are concerned about what? The bottom line.
Right.
Okay. So even though they have their talking points to say, put the patient first and this and that and the third, at the end of the day, they don't want to be in the red. Right. And so that means that when you're employing, your physicians or your mid-level providers or what have you, they dictate how many patients they need to see. They dictate how long you're able to see them, which is often 15 minutes, 20 minutes. These are the types of things that we're up against when we are not self-employed. And because these larger healthcare systems are really taking over everything, it's very, very hard to be independent or in a private practice and do things on your own where you're able to sit and talk with patients, truly learn their history without being rushed, right? Because when you're rushed, you miss things. You miss things. The patients forget to tell you things. These are all very significant when it comes to prenatal health care, right? So it's so many different factors. And part of that also is the lack of diversity in medicine too.
Okay.
There have been studies that have shown that, number one, oftentimes patients do prefer a physician that is of their same ethnicity because it makes them more comfortable. But number two, there are some studies that have shown that they may also have better outcomes because of that. And of course, that's controversial, but
right.
That's what the study numbers said nonetheless. So even though I think with us trying to help increase the numbers of Black women in medicine, will be helpful, that's certainly not the end all be all at all.
Have you experienced a situation where your diversity or your cultural connection did identify something that maybe was overlooked by someone else of a different persuasion?
There's been a couple of occasions, none that I want to specifically talk about, but yeah, there have been sometimes where just that relatability can make someone trust you more than maybe someone else, to where they'll share a little bit more. And one thing I also tell patients too is that, listen, we're not the people that you want to lie to or keep anything from, right?
Absolutely.
Regardless of how we look, regardless of whether you're talking to a Black physician or whoever, you need to tell everything, right? Because this is how we're going to be able to treat you the best.
I agree with that. I tell my clients, and it's totally different. The stakes are totally different. I said, I'm the one person you do not want to lie to because I
Right.
need to know how to address whatever it is that's not right. And if you don't tell me the truth, then I don't know how to handle it. So
100%.
I completely agree with you there. Stepping away from the mortality rate with pregnancy in general, are there times when, are there certain areas of health challenges where you look at it and says this could have been prevented or treated if perhaps diagnosed earlier or person's lifestyle was different? How often are you frustrated with people who are sick that perhaps shouldn't be? If that makes
Oh,
sense, am I asking a question correctly?
100% regularly. You
Okay.
said how often. Um, and that's because while part of, our health disparities in this country are for, um, the poor system that's in place, the lack of access to care, for those of us who don't have those particular issues and who have the appropriate resources, but choose not to go to your physician annually for your annual exams, or choose not to be compliant and listen to what we're asking you to do and why. um those are things that are very frustrating because we don't talk just to hear ourselves, right? When we're in these very brief appointments with you and we're trying to go over, hey, your numbers look good, we're going to plan to see you back next year, but in the meantime you should do X, Y, and Z. We're not telling you that for our own health, we're telling you that for you, right? So the national recommendation for exercise is 150 minutes a week. You can break that up however you want, right? Because our time allotments for each, whatever your weeks are, however your schedule looks is different. But ultimately we all waste time doing things, right? So
Right.
150 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 days a week, you can exercise. And this is not about physique. This is what I tell my patients too. This is not about how you look. This is because exercise has so many benefits. It can decrease your blood sugar. It promotes energy via endorphins. It helps to strengthen your bones, right? Because you strengthen your muscles as you get older, you have a risk of osteoporosis, the risk of falls, the mortality from that. Like, there is a method to the madness. There are things that we're telling you for your own good, right? But also particularly diet. So obesity medicine, weight management, those are strong passions of mine. I actually recently got board certified in obesity medicine because I really want to implement that more into my practice with women's health care. But man, the obesity epidemic is one that contributes so significantly to chronic disease that people have no idea. And you have to very often approach the topic. um you have to step lightly, as people say,
Right.
because when you bring up weight, people always say you're fat shaming or you're this or you're that, and it's like, no, I don't want you to die because obesity, specifically in women's health, um obesity, or in adipose tissue, you produce more estrogen, right? So you have estrogen and progesterone that come from your ovaries too. But if you are overweight, there's also estrogen that's being produced in your fat tissue, but there's no progesterone counteracting that. So that means that estrogen can also act on your uterus too. So what can happen then? You can have an overgrowth of your uterine lining that promotes unhealthy tissue that can then lead to uterine cancer. Over 80% of uterine cancer is directly related to obesity, right? And abnormal bleeding. So these are things that people just don't know. And we talk to people about it. And again, sometimes people just hear, oh, she was talking to me about my weight and that I'm overweight. And I'm like, no, did you hear anything that came after that? So that is one of the things that I'm particularly very passionate about, not just because it contributes to abnormal GYN issues, but also to other chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes, which then lead to ultimately shortened lifestyles for all of us, and we really want to see all of us live to see our full potential.
So even with issues of access to quality health care, even with issues of heredity, you still find that a lot of things could be addressed by diet and exercise.
100%.
Wow.
So often people want a pill. They want a
Mhm.
pill, they want a magic kind of fix it elixir, right? And oftentimes I can give you all the blood pressure pills in the world, but
Mhm.
that's not addressing the issue, right? The issue is the sodium in your diet. The
Right.
issue is the soda that you're drinking every day. The issue is the sugar that you're cooking with and the butter. Like these are things, these are lifestyle changes that you have to make. That I can give you this pill, but as long as you continue this, guess what? The next time your blood pressure is still going to be high, and I'm gonna have to go up on this dose, right?
Right. And some of that is culture, how we have been learned to cook. And then
Hmm.
some of that is also access to affordable, healthy food. I imagine that some people
Correct.
just can't afford the healthier alternatives or don't know how to perhaps still give that soul food flavor, but using a healthier alternative to achieve the same goal.
100%. And I mean, you're absolutely right because food deserts are very real, very real. And a lot of our communities, of course, still, depending on where you are, you're absolutely right, do suffer from lack of access to. And I'm not necessarily addressing or referencing those particular communities
Right.
because that's a completely different set of issues. But just for those of us who do have the access to really everything that we need, but just choose to ignore, that's kind of more of my frustration.
And you mentioned passion, and this passion has spilled over into you forming a nonprofit organization. Tell us more about this nonprofit organization that you have established to address some of these greater issues in the community.
Yes. So when I moved back home in 2015, because I was church shopping and I reached out to you for help.
That
It
was 2015.
was 2015 when I moved back
Wow,
home.
that's 7 years
Yeah,
ago. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Wow.
I was like, listen, Pastor, I need your help. I need your help. You finding a church. And so that led me to Tidewater Bible Way Kingdom Cathedral with Bishop Michael Rogers, who is amazing. And I really enjoyed being a part of the ministry. But one of the things, especially after kind of some of the other young ladies found out that I was a OBGYN specifically, a lot of them wanted to kind of pick my brain just about GYN issues, reproductive health issues, things that they either didn't have time to talk to their GYNs about or weren't comfortable. And so I set up like a little round table one Saturday at a local library, and we just talked about a lot of things. We like put questions in a hat if anyone wasn't comfortable asking, and we talked for a while, and it was really awesome. And I've always had a passion for community health education, and so that was right up my alley. And that really kind of motivated me to further that particular session into something greater. But also kind of shifting from that around, I think maybe 3 months prior, we lost one of my medical school classmates from Harry very suddenly because of pregnancy related complications. And so being, young and otherwise healthy, we never think that the end is near. And so time, was an acronym that I had been given around the time of her death. And I kind of, wrote those letters and those words down, and kind of kept that in my back pocket. So then, fast forward to the round table, combining the two, I realized that I just wanted to do something greater, and time was formed, and officially incorporated in February of 2017. And initially, I wanted to really focus on community health education, um, speaking engagements, workshops, things of that nature. And then I realized very quickly that running a nonprofit is hard. Especially when it's just you and you have a full-time job separate from that.
Right.
And I have to be honest, I got very just overwhelmed because I knew that the passion was there, and I had to figure out how to make it a little more feasible for me. And so then, COVID happens. I remained prayerful, and then God gave me a vision of mentorship.
Mhm.
So I've had some amazing mentors throughout my entire life, whether spiritual, professional, personal, what have you, that have really helped me along this journey, and I would not have gotten here without them. And so God really helped me focus the organization specifically into mentoring young women who want to pursue, young Black women who
Okay.
want to pursue careers in medicine. And so I changed the name to Time for Her to make it more descriptive. And I changed the focus about 2 years ago. And so right now we are strictly focusing on young women who want to pursue careers in medicine, because even though I know that I alone cannot combat the Black maternal health crisis, I know that if I can help even 1 or 2 young Black women get into medical school, that increases the percentage of us that are out there, which will ultimately help.
So with that shift, so you're no longer doing the community education, or you added the mentoring to the community education?
I'm trying to combine the two, but my focus is on mentorship and
Okay.
educating them.
Okay. And then by recruiting and encouraging more people of color to go into the medical profession, diversity, and then those cultural connection with patients, and then they go out into the communities to
Correct.
educate. I love that. So you're like a seed that grows up to become a tree, and then you have fruit that becomes other seeds, and then next thing
Yes,
you
I felt like my reach could be a little wider in this regard. But I will also say that in the very near future, I will definitely resume more community health education, but it'll be in a different realm. So I'll just
I
kind of
love
put
that.
that out there.
I love that because I remember a time was it teach, inspire, mentor, educate, or empower?
Encourage.
Encourage. Okay.
Yes.
And the focus was on uh, wellness. Was it nutrition?
Hmm.
And what was the other one? Wellness, nutrition. Wasn't diet. Health, wellness.
Just overall healthcare,
Okay. Okay.
overall women's healthcare.
Let me ask you then about the mental health of women, and we're getting close to our hour is up. Black women are known to be some of the strongest, most resilient women in history, from slavery to segregation. I mean, they are the pillars, they are the foundation, and they bear so many of the burdens of others. I think some of that is a strength, and I imagine we celebrate that strength. But oftentimes, you've probably seen this as well. How many of our women suffer because they put others before themselves, both physically as well as mentally? Even when you say time for her, most women are
Hmm.
probably laughing. What is that?
Right.
Because there's no such thing as time for mom, because they're giving time to the children, time to the spouse, time to the grandkids, time to this, that, or the other. Even when they get me time, it's infringed on.
Hmm.
So what would you say to perhaps that working professional or that mom who maybe doesn't even realize the strain that they are bearing mentally, emotionally,
Hmm.
physically, because they're so concerned about everyone else to the neglect of themselves?
Oh, that's pretty loaded. Man, I think that, oh man,
You can
Black women
dissect
are,
it. You can divide it up however you want.
yeah. Black women are amazing. Like, we are so amazing. We have endured so much and we have carried so much on our backs. And the expectation is that we're always supposed to be like that, and we're just supposed to take the beatings and just keep going and keep going and keep pushing. And it is exhausting. It is exhausting and it is very unhealthy. And as someone who has experienced severe depression, like a major depressive episode and everything, um, I cannot emphasize enough how we as a community really need to create more balance within our families, of sharing the load of everything, right? The financial load, the children, working with kids, the chores at home, like just everything. Because oftentimes women feel like we have to do it on our own. And I even see it now that people who are in marriages or in relationships are still doing everything on their own, and we need help. We need help. And I think that one thing that helped me particularly was getting a therapist. And I know that specifically, growing up in church, so often we heard, nobody should be depressed. You should just, pray about it and what have you. But for me, that wasn't enough.
Mhm.
That wasn't enough. So in addition to my spiritual guidance, I really needed a therapist and a coach. And I have an amazing Black female therapist, and I have for probably the past 5 years, and I do therapy regularly. And, similar to how we should always go to physicians for our preventive health care for women's health or for men's health or what have you, that includes our mind. And I think that everyone should have a therapist as part of their repertoire, just like you have a dentist, just like you have a PCP, you should have a therapist. There shouldn't take anything to be wrong for you to get that, because sometimes it helps to have a neutral party to help talk those things out, to help create safe spaces for yourself, for your self-care, for your self-love, for your me time, because it's necessary. Because if not, you will hit a brick wall, you will burn out. And, as you know, like the suicide rate, the depression, like all of these things have increased exponentially, especially since COVID. But over the years, they have all continued to increase because we just don't take care of our mental health. And so I know you mentioned specifically Black women, but I just think it's important for everyone, but especially those of us in the Black community.
And I appreciate your transparency, even with sharing your personal experience, because I forget the term for it, but the successful Black woman who seems to have it all, is managing it all. We've seen the attack of on Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. You see, Vice President come out, and they seem like they wear it so well. Mm-hmm. You see actresses and those in corporate America that seem like and I forget what was the Miss America that they committed suicide.
Mm-hmm. Christy.
Right.
I think Chris. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's Chris. I can't remember her name specifically.
And it's the whole, on the outside, everything looks perfect, but on the inside, there's something that's going on the inside. How do we, as husbands, sons, fathers, help our women get the help that they need? How can we be more supportive? What do you see if you were to talk to the husband, the son, the father about your patient? What advice would you give to them? This is what you need to do or can do to help this person that you say you love so much.
I think first you have to be present, because we live in a society that is all about social media, and just being somewhere else, right? Like we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're doing whatever instead of being home with your wife or with your children and talking. And just like we used to do, right? Like eating dinner together seems to be a tough feat for a lot of people now, because you got the plate right here and then you got the phone or the iPad over here. And it's like, when is the last time you actually talked over dinner instead of everybody looking in their phones or watching TV? What is it like? Do you know how your wife's day was at work, or how your husband's day was at work? Do you know how your child's day was at school? Like, what have they endured at school? Like, who are their friends? Like, we don't know each other anymore because we're always on social media. We're always doing something else. So my suggestion is to just be present, not just in the room, but be mentally there and talk, communicate.
I love that. Dr. Hairston, we've enjoyed your testimony. We've enjoyed your success. We're in the stands cheering you on as you run your race. We have across the bottom your Instagram handle, Time for Her, yes, there, and as well as Facebook. You can connect with her personally on Instagram. You can donate to Time from Her through the website, correct?
Yes, there is actually a donate tab where you can go through PayPal Giving Fund on the website.
And if people
and it's tax deductible, so.
Okay, tax deductible, because she is a 501c3 organization, so yes, all contributions are tax deductible. And if they are interested in perhaps inviting you to their conference or session, is through your website the best way to reach you?
Yes, or my personal email too. But yes, you can reach out. I think we have a couple of contact forms on the website too, so I check both emails daily. So yes.
And so you do personal and virtual sessions. I guess one of the blessings of the pandemic is it's opened up the avenue of doing more virtual sessions for people?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Zoom is like my friend now.
All right. So if you're listening and you want this saved, talented, gifted, anointed, professional woman of faith, woman of God to come and share for your church, for your women's ministry, women's conference, or just to support her organization, she's I highly recommend her. I highly promote her. Highly support her, and thank God for you. And so, in closing, this is Mantle Mondays, and you've already talked about the importance of mentoring and increasing the level of diversity in your profession and your goals through time for her. I forgot this. You're a top 40 under 40.
It's the 10 under 10 at Meharry.
10 under 10. Okay, so that's even better. I said top 40 under 40. So top 10 of those who have graduated 10 years or less.
Yes.
Out of all of Meharry? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
In that endeavor. Wow, top 10 under 10 out of all these students who graduated medical school in the last decade from Meharry, the top HBCU, top medical school in the country. You're top 10 under 10 years. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, we were actually nominated by our peers and elected by a separate committee not even related to the college. And so I'm truly honored and grateful yeah, to be in that number. We actually have Meharry's homecoming next weekend, next week/weekend, and our 10 under 10 ceremony is on Thursday. So that's something that I'm really, really excited about, and I'm really grateful for, and I'm truly honored. So thank you.
What are your future goals? Do you want to be Surgeon General? Do you want to be
Oh
Secretary of
no.
Health and Human Services? Do you want to own your own hospital?
I want to continue my mentorship, and I want to continue to grow time for her as God sees fit. But I actually want to utilize my obesity medicine board certification and my OBGYN board certification concurrently. And so right now I'm working to make that happen. And hopefully I'll be able to share more news in that regard in the near future. So that is
I
my
love
goal.
it. So, Dr. Hairston, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell everybody once again, I see so many of your family. I see people from the home church tuned in, from our church, even here in Richmond. I want to ask each of you to like, invite, share, tag all of your, she got so many cousins, tag all the cousins, nieces, nephews, cousins, aunts, uncles, people from the home church, from the church she's attending now, people in the medical profession, because this information is not only inspirational, but this information could save someone's life. And so with so much negativity on social media, let's share this young lady's story and what she's accomplished and the information that she's sharing this for free. So you don't have to worry about health insurance. You didn't have to worry about bringing her in and giving an honorarium. She gave you these golden nuggets for free. And we're so grateful for her sharing tonight. So what I'm going to do, I am going to come off the screen and I want you to speak from the heart as to whatever you want to say to anybody, and then close us out in prayer. And then we're done for tonight. And so once again, we thank God for Dr. Hairston. Join us next week. Our guest will be Pastor James Tyson from Indianapolis, Indiana. And then we'll conclude the month with Dr. Sean Saunders, publisher, author, and writer, as we're concluding this second season of Mantle Mondays. And so, Dr. Hairston, the floor is yours to speak as God's mouthpiece to the people.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Travis, for having me. It has been a pleasure. I just really want to encourage those of you who are interested in careers in medicine specifically, to just keep going. You know, I mentor a couple of young women right now, and the road is certainly not easy by any means, but it's also not meant to be. You know, we're going to be responsible for people's livelihood. And so it's meant to be difficult, but as long as it's a calling, you'll certainly get there. I also want to send a special shout out to my mom, who recently underwent a major surgery that we have been really stressing for the past couple of years, specifically over the past year. And thankfully, God brought her through. She is on the road to recovery and healing. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for those of you who knew about her procedure, and for those of you who sent prayers and well wishes and, food and cards and love and everything to my mom and to our family. We're incredibly grateful for you. And so without further ado, I will say a quick word of prayer, and I hope you all have a good night after. So dear Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for Pastor Travell, for having this platform for those of us who have organizations and businesses to be able to share. And thank you so much for allowing him to even think of me to be able to share more about Time for Her and the platform. I pray that in the future, the organization grows and its mission continues to be fulfilled. I ask that you bless everyone who is listening and who's watching right now, that you will continue to keep them, watch over their families, bless them to have an amazing week, and continue to keep us in the age of COVID and all the other things that are going on in our society. Allow us to have peace through the storms, love, comfort one another in the midst of any storm that any one of us may be enduring. I ask that you bless again all of us to have an amazing week, an amazing night. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2022? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church laws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2022. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then Where Will the Mantle Fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where Will the Mantle Fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.